So picture this, you have this huge trip overseas coming up and you're starting to pack when you realize you have an issue with your passport, whether it's, I don't know, it's expired, maybe you lost it, or it's your very first international trip and you've never needed one before. Getting a passport in a jiffy, that can be a headache, especially for anyone here in Central Florida. And that's because in order to get urgent or expedited assistance, you have to go to the only passport agency in the state of Florida, and that happens to be hours away down in Miami. But by 2027, that will no longer be the case. That's when a brand new office here in Orlando will open alongside 5 others around the country. So joining us today to talk about the new office is one of the people who played a major role in bringing it to the city beautiful. We have Congressman Maxwell Frost. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here at In Focus.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Of course, we really appreciate that. And so I just want to start with, why this is such an important issue for you, right off the bat. I'm just wondering, what kind of stories perhaps were you hearing from some of your constituents to drive this project?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of our legislation and a lot of the work that we do doesn't come from, stuff that I just made up, right? It comes from conversations we've had with people. It comes from the influx of phone calls and letters. A lot of people always ask me, does it matter when I call a congressional office? And I always say yes, right? Every week I receive a report that tells me how many calls, how many messages we've got, some highlighted ones as well about specific issues. And something we've noticed every time I would speak with my constituent advocates, which are caseworkers, is that passports, it's the number 1, 2, and 3 call in our office here in Orlando. For many different reasons. People, number one, a lot of times forget to renew their passport before vacation, so oftentimes they need help. Or maybe a family member passes away. They have to unexpectedly go somewhere. Maybe they've never had a passport before. Or maybe something unexpected came up. And the problem is, in our state, like you mentioned, there's only one passport office in Miami. And we saw this as a huge issue, and that's when we started figuring out what can we do for the ultimate goal of bringing an office to Orlando, but also we had a lot of checkpoints to get up to that point that got us this win that we're excited about.
So then, all right, so you hear from these experiences with folks. So then where do you even start with a project like this?
Well, first we sit down and, I'm someone who comes from grassroots organizing, and so I always think about a campaign in its totality, right? Or a story in its totality. And what do we want the end of this story to be? The end of the story, we want it to be that there's a passport office in Orlando. And when we looked into the history of it, number one, members of Congress that were in my seat before and really all across Central Florida have been fighting for this for a while. So it's a project that's been going on and ongoing and ongoing. Even some of our senators as well. But then we figured, well, the story has to begin somewhere. Where does it begin? And so in speaking with people about what frustrated them the most about the passport situation, of course it was that I wish I had one closer, but the second thing was I wish that there were better hours in the Miami office, because going there Monday through Friday during a work day, you have to take off of work, you got to drive down 3 to 4 hours. Many cases, you got to spend money on a hotel or somewhere to sleep in case your appointment goes later into the evening, and it was a big issue. So we said, let's start with something a little bit, that's not exactly everything we want, but a little bit, and it's to expand the Miami office hours into the weekends. And so I'm on the House Oversight Committee, and we wrote a letter to the State Department asking them, can we have a weekend, Saturday hours every single week where people can go down there? Because for my constituents in Orlando, and even people all around the state, it's hard to go there on a Monday through Friday.
Right. And so you took office, it was January 2023.
Yep.
And this thing was announced in the summer of 24. Did you have someone with guidance, with making this one of your top initial efforts?
Many people. Of course, my amazing staff. There's a lot of things people see in the public, which is usually when I'm on TV or I'm on a committee hearing. There's a lot of things people don't see, and it's the staff-to-staff conversations, calling the State Department. working with our local government. I have to give big props to Orlando and Orange County that we worked with on this as well. We really brought everyone together on this project, and we also knew we got to make it a bipartisan project as well, right?
Because it doesn't feel like it's a divisive issue,
It's
right?
not a divisive issue. Now, the place where it gets a little tricky, right, is we're asking for there to be a new government office open in Orange County, and there are those who don't want the government to expand at all. But the problem is when it's not working for everyone, we got to look at ways that we can build it up. Right? And that's what we needed to do here in Central Florida. One of my biggest cases for this was the fact that we're the third biggest state in the country. The first two biggest states, which are New York and California, each have 3 passport offices, and we only had 1. And we have a lot more natural disasters than they do. In fact, during Hurricane Ian, we had 0 passport offices for many weeks. Why? Because the Miami one got flooded during Ian, and there was a huge issue. And so for us, we think we need them really spread throughout the state, and a good first step was getting an Orlando passport office. And so we worked with our staff. We hatched a plan together that started with requesting those Saturday hours. Now, we didn't get our Saturday hours. What we got is we got 1 Saturday a month, which was a win.
Okay,
right? We were excited about it, and it was something that we were able to funnel a lot of the calls we were getting into that. Hey, if you work Monday through Friday, if you're a working class person, you're already struggling to make ends meet, we don't want you to have to take off of work to go do something that should be a lot easier to get done. And so we would funnel people into those Saturday hours so it'd be a little easier on them. But those Saturday hours, coupled with our passport days that we held here in Orlando to show what the demand is like, helped us build a really good case to the State Department, which is ultimately why we got where we got.
Got it. And I want to unpack a little bit more what you had said about the other states. So if we zoom out right now, we know that there are 30 passport offices in total. So not every state has one. And right now, like you said, only New York, California, and Texas have more than one. You said 3. And the one coming to Orlando will be Florida's second site, as you said, when those 6 new facilities begin operating. So, Congressman, what does it say to you, that Florida is one of just a small number of states with multiple sites, given that just size-wise, it seems like we're middle-ish. So pulling this off is something else.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, when we first pushed for it, and before I even asked for the Saturday hours, we had some kind of internal conversations with State Department, and they told us blatantly, we're not doing any more offices. We're actually kind of trying to step away from building more offices and move everything online. But part of the problem is we all know that the online program that currently exists isn't perfect, and it can take a long time for folks. And there is a need to set an appointment, go to an office, and have your passport printed right there. And that's the difference between what's called a passport counter and a passport agency. There's hundreds of counters throughout Central Florida. What is that? It's a place where you can go, get your photo taken, and get your application sent to an agency that prints it. But passport agencies are the only offices in the country that can print the passport same day. Like when you go to the DMV and you get your driver's license printed, right? There's only a few of those in the country. We were told flat out, that's not something that we're looking at. It's actually something we're walking away from. And I had a big issue with it. And that's part of the way that we were able to really get stories from people in Central Florida, older seniors in our district, families, younger people, and really present this case and say, we are the top tourist destination in the country. We are a place that is growing and growing and growing every single day, and this is something that we need in Central Florida. And so my team and I went to figure out the way that we could put this case forward other than me just saying things. And so we started doing what are called passport days, which is essentially when we'd work with the Miami office. They'd send some staff up for a day.
Is that the pop-up?
These are the pop-ups,
yeah.
And we did them kind of around the district. A lot of them are at UCF, and I got to give a big shout out to UCF for partnering with us on this. In fact, there was even a group on campus, I wish I could shout them out, I forget the name, but they would come and do the photography for people as well. So it was a one-stop shop where they could get everything done. Our waiting list was hundreds of people long. I mean, it would be 300 to 400 people sign up just like that. And the good thing is the people from the agency were there to see it. We're there to see the demand. We had the back-end data that we could show them. So, in this whole effort to get the office, there's a lot of different ways that we went about it, but the pop-ups were a really big one.
We, on the show here, talk a lot in Central Florida about the state as a whole. It's a tourist destination, the theme parks, the awesome beaches, just to name a couple. So I'm wondering, Congressman, how crucial is it that we don't just bring visitors here, but also to make it easier for Floridians to travel around the globe. I mean, is there even an uptick in that interest? What are you hearing and seeing?
It is important, and there is an uptick. That's why part of the reason why we've gotten so many passport inquiries over the 3 years I've been in office, and why it's one of our top calls. And it shouldn't be challenging for Floridians to be able to leave the state and go to where they want to go. We know that we're the top tourist destination in the country, and we're the top tourist destination for a lot of other countries as well. For instance, Brazil, right? We're the most visited destination for Brazilians outside of Brazil, right? And so we are such a culturally diverse community, especially here in Central Florida. A lot of people say their districts are diverse, but it's like predominantly one, group. Mine is actually diverse, right? We have so many people from across the entire world who oftentimes want to go visit family, want to go see loved ones, different things like that, which is important. And we're also such a transient community where oftentimes we have people who live in Orlando that are very new to Orlando, but they still like to travel. We need to go spread the word of how awesome and amazing Central Florida is. And so, this is one of the many reasons why we push so hard for this passport office.
Awesome. And so, I mean, you did the work to get the commitment from the U.S. State Department. So now what? Can you sit back and watch them take care of this thing and get this new facility up and running, or do you have an active role in that?
We have an active role. We don't sit back. Typically, once you get the office, a lot of offices will just say, all right, cool, well, it'll come at some point. But this is something we worked so hard on, and we were very, very persistent speaking with State Department. I wanted to understand, and my staff, we all wanted to understand, what was the process? What does it look like? A lot of times when something gets approved by one agency, it gets disseminated to a lot of other agencies. And we wanted to have a hand in being able to advocate for where it should go as well. And so in speaking with the State Department, after we got that call and they said, Maxwell, there's 5 to 6 new passport agencies opening. Orlando's going to be one of them. The first thing I asked was, great, what's the timeline? What is it looking like? Are you looking at locations? And for people to know, what happens is once it's approved, it goes to a government agency called GSA. GSA does a lot of government procurement. They're the ones that work on the leases and the agreements and all that for the federal buildings. And so what they said is GSA will enter into a process to find a good spot, and they will sign a lease, and you could submit recommendations. So we worked with the county, we worked with the city, we worked with local folks to get a bunch of different recommendations, send these to GSA, had a couple meetings with GSA as well to hear about where we were. And we heard a few weeks before it became public that there was a building that we felt good about. And the building it's going to be at is actually just north of the airport, and it's actually the old Social Security Administration office, which we're excited about because it's going to help them expedite the process because it was a federal building at a point. There's going to be some more they have to do in terms of retrofitting it because it needs to be a very secure building. It's going to be one of the only places in the country where a passport can be printed. And so there's a lot of proprietary technology and stuff like that with the government that needs to be secure.
So speaking of the active role that you have, the congressman also has an entire page on his website dedicated to helping constituents handle passport issues. So how common is that for a member of Congress? Because we often think of your work mostly, debating on the House floor or introducing legislation, but there's a whole lot to do here at home, right?
There's a whole lot to do here at home. In fact, I'd say it's just as important as the work I do in D.C., if not more important sometimes. Look, we do what's called constituent services, where we help constituents work through the federal government, get through red tape, and get what they needed done. And it's some of the most important work that we do. We've handled thousands of cases. We've brought back millions of dollars. And when I say that, I don't mean in government grants and funding. That number is more of hundreds of millions of dollars. But the number I'm talking about is you never got your tax return. You contact Congressman Maxwell Frost. We contact the IRS on your behalf. We fight you to get you your money that you're owed, and then you get the money that you're owed. Let's say you've been getting underpaid from Social Security Administration for years. And I don't like to use the word pay because it's not a pay, it's an earned benefit that you've paid into your whole life. We contact the Social Security Administration on your behalf, and we say, Congressman Maxwell Frost wants to know why his constituent has been receiving under the amount they're supposed to receive. And then we get you your retroactive check and back pay for what you've earned and what you've paid into your whole life. So that number is millions of dollars we've gotten for people here in Central Florida. But some of the other stuff we do has to do with passports and immigration and helping people through a system that's very complicated. And our number one call right now has to do with passports.
Isn't that wild? Because on your page, you list all the different circumstances as to why you might be having to reach out to you, or so catch us up to speed. So say it's 2027. In the interim, do things kind of remain status quo for Floridians? In an urgent situation, should they just contact your office, or what's the action call right now?
Exactly. If they have any issues with their passports, they should contact our office, and we will help them get through the process. We'll help them get an appointment in the Miami office, which is still, moving forward. 2027 feels very far away. It'll come here sooner than we think. Of course, the federal government doesn't always work in the fastest way, but we're really excited about it, and we'll invite the whole community to come out, right, once that opens, so people can see what it is and how important it is going to be to our area. But in the interim, people can still reach out to our office if they need help with anything in terms of passports and anything else. A lot of times people reach out to us, or they see us at an event and they ask, what do you do? And they don't even know that they actually needed help. In fact, many of our Social Security wins that we've gotten for people, they were owed $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. They didn't even know it. They just signed a disclosure with us and said, look into my stuff just in case. And then we find out you're owed a lot of money. There's a lot of talk right now about the federal government and waste, fraud, and abuse and stuff, which is really important. But what I've found as a member of Congress is that if you owe the federal government money, they're going to be on top of that. But if they owe you money, they're not going to be on top of that. I'll be on top of that to make sure you get what you're owed. And that's what the constituent services are about and why it's so important.
Understood. And as we head to our final break, I just want to bring up, too, that if you have time, if you know you're going to travel next year, the local passport offices, it takes, 4 to 6 weeks?
On average, 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes it takes longer. We've seen there's a lot of staffing shortages and stuff like that at the agency that does it. Sometimes we've heard 2 to 3 months. But what we encourage people to do is do it early, right? If you're seeing your passport's going to expire in a year or so, just go and do it, even if you don't have plans. And that's part of the problem is people like to wait until they make plans for travel to renew their passport and get a passport. Just do it now. Number one, it's nice to have another form of ID on you or available to you that's a government ID, especially in this day and age. And then the second thing is that by the time you make plans to travel, sometimes it's already too late, right? Especially if it takes 4 to 6 weeks. Just do it now, and you'll forget about it, and one day it'll come in the mail, and it won't be an emergency. But not everyone can avoid an emergency, and so reach out to our office if you need help with that, and we're very willing to help out.
Absolutely. Actually, after the show, we're all probably going to find our passport first and do a quick check. So, Congressman, tell me more about this government oversight committee that you're on. We were just chatting during the break.
Well, it's one of my 2 committees. It's actually a committee that's usually the center of a lot of controversy and yelling and stuff like that. But the cool thing about oversight is we have a lot of government officials in front of us. So we would always have the State Department there. And oftentimes I would kind of ignore whatever the subject was and ask them about passports in Orlando, because it's a time where I can ask them under oath for commitments in public on video. And we did it multiple times with the Saturday office hours, with the passport office in Orlando, and getting those commitments from the highest officials of the State Department a few years ago really helped us push this through. And it just goes to show the committees you sit on oftentimes can really help you with very specific projects that you're working on.
So say it's 2027, we're walking into this space. What do we expect? Size, staffing, just with the vibes. What are we expecting for that grand moment?
Yeah, for the grand moment? All right. Well, in terms of size and staffing, what we've been told is it's going to be a little smaller than the Miami office. It'll be kind of a medium-sized office. So not huge, but not super small, but enough to really meet the demand that we're going to have here in Central Florida. It is at the old Social Security Administration office, so if people have been there before, it's just north of the airport.
So it's going to use the same structure?
It's going to use the same structure. There might be some differences on the inside and the interior that they make, just because the function is a little different. But that's what it'll be like. And there'll be some new jobs available in Central Florida too, some good federal worker jobs, which are really important.
And just a final lightning question, how big of a difference is this going to make for the average Floridian?
It's going to make a big difference. And, we were talking before this that usually when I walk down the street, people are like, thank you for fighting and thank you for this. But nowadays, people come up to me and say, thank you for the passport office. People who don't really care about politics, who will say, I don't pay attention much. but that seems like something I'm going to be able to use that's going to be really important. It's just a really good example of showing people that government can work for them and how it can work for them, which is really important to me and is the whole reason I decided to run for office in the first place.
So great getting to know you, Congressman.
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us here.
Appreciate
on
it. Thanks for
Focus.
having me.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. To keep up with important issues impacting our communities and hear more conversations with the people who are shaping the future, subscribe to our channel. You can also download our app or find Spectrum News on your TV for balanced, in-depth political coverage and more.